There was an interesting article that came out not too long ago. I think it was about just over a week ago. And it actually talked about how President Trump might actually be worried about taking on a socialist or the issue of socialism, assuming that's the candidate that he's going to take on. And this is something that's kind of being whispered through his through his administration and kind of through his his confidants and aides and stuff. So it's not something that's like out there. It's something that he's just telling to certain people so that they don't let it out. And but he's apparently made it well known among people that know him and among people that also that like people that he's like friends with in the media too. So I'm going to discuss that in this article here. So this article is from the Daily Beast. It's titled "Trump Privately Tells Confidants That Socialism Won't Be So Easy to Beat in 2020." The subheadline says the president is not totally sold on the attack line that he and his team have made so central to their campaign. So that's a big deal. I mean, that's very significant. That's something that you wouldn't think he would want to go out there and admit. He would, if anything, you would think Republicans, yeah, let's totally run against socialism. Let's totally, smear socialism and attack socialism and call everybody a socialist, because that's what they already do. But the only difference is that when you go out there and call President Obama a socialist, or you call Joe Biden a socialist, they're not able to defend socialism. And what they do is say, oh yeah, we hate socialism too. We're not socialists. We're totally not socialists. But what Bernie Sanders does, he goes out there and says, yeah, there's socialist policies that are wonderful. The post office is socialist. The military is socialist. The firefighters are socialist. The police are socialist. You know what I'm saying? These are all socialist, quote, socialist groups because they're run by the government. So you got a problem with that? Obviously you don't. Medicare is socialist. Social Security is socialist. These are all things that are run by the government. National parks are socialist, So Bernie Sanders, he knows this kind of stuff. If he's perfectly happy if you call him out for it. He'll be like, yeah, these are all wonderful socialist programs that we have, if you want to call them that. But you can, because they're run by the government. Socialism is when the government runs a program or runs a certain kind of thing, certain kind of thing that's happening in the country and it's run by the government. That's socialism. So, but Bernie knows how to address it. Other corporate Democrats don't know how to address those issues because they're corporate Democrats, and they have to constantly fumble over their words, and they don't know how to articulate their positions because they don't really have any truly principled beliefs. They just want to defend themselves against not being too radical. God forbid they're radical. Can't have that. So let me get into the body of the article here. It says, as he campaigns for re-election, Donald Trump and his team have made trashing the socialists or communists in the 2020 Democratic presidential field a cornerstone of their messaging. In private, however, the president often strikes a different, more nuanced tone. One driven by a concern that socialism, at least as defined by the Democrats, may actually sell politically. This year, Trump has repeatedly told friends and donors that running against socialism in a general election may not be so easy because of its populist draw, according to 4 Republicans and sources close to Trump who have heard him say this over the past several months. According to a person who was in the room, Trump told donors at a recent private event that though, quote, a lot of people think it'll be easy to beat in 2020, the truth is it might not be so easy. The president, according to the source, said that you can have someone who loves Trump, but many people love free stuff too. Obviously, he puts it that way, but okay. He added that if candidates tell Americans, especially young voters, that they're going to cancel their debt, that's a tough one to run against. Yeah, that's true. He's obviously not wrong, but obviously the way he's framing it is just in like a right-wing perspective, as usual, which is what the media does as well, of course. So this is quoting Eric Bolling. He's a host at Blaze TV, used to work for Fox News too, and he's a friend of the Trump family. He says, I have discussed the popularity of the Democratic Socialist message, i.e. Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. That's not Elizabeth Warren. Elizabeth Warren is not a Democratic Socialist or a Socialist, but okay. So he said he's discussed this message with Sanders and Warren, with President, and then Yeah, he's discussed them, so Sanders and Warren, with President Trump on more than one occasion and in person. Specifically, the idea of excusing debt and giving away, as Trump says, quote, free stuff, becoming more and more popular among younger voters. Bolling said Trump had made these comments to him as recently as mid-2019. I feel it was more an observation than a re-election concern of the president's, he recalled. I feel the discussion was more of a tamping down of expectations than any serious concern about winning re-election in 2020. It's politics. Just look to Joe Biden, who recently suggested Iowa isn't a must-win state. Yeah, that is kind of strange. Let's see here. It says, here in the United States, we are alarmed by new calls to adopt socialism in our country, Trump said. America was founded on liberty and independence, not government coercion, domination, and control. Oh yeah, so when we have a fascist state here in the United States, and you do like mass surveillance on, millions and millions of people, and you punish whistleblowers, you punish people that are, giving secrets to, the American people to know, apparently that's, apparently it's freedom. That's liberty. You guys totally love freedom and liberty, but only when it comes to the things that you want for the elites, for the government elites and elites in general, essentially. And then he says, tonight we renew our resolve that America will never be a socialist country. So that's what he said during the, he said that during his thing, his State of the Union speech. So he made that kind of, that was kind of part of his diatribe. And apparently that was part of, I don't know if it was this line specifically, but there was a line that, that Donald Trump made about socialism. Well, we will never be a socialist country. And he made this during the State of the Union speech in I think it was January or February, whatever it was. February, yeah. And he got a rousing ovation, and everybody stood up. Oh my God, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. And one of the people to clap for him was Elizabeth Warren, let alone a bunch of other Democrats too. And she was standing right behind Bernie Sanders, and Bernie Sanders the whole time was like, and he was just so bored. He looked fucking, bored out of his mind. He was just like, well, this is ridiculous, and I want to get the fuck out of here. He just wasn't having any of it. But the fact that Elizabeth Warren was clapping for that, it was just ridiculous. So was, what's her name? Nancy Pelosi too, which is not surprising considering it's Nancy Pelosi. But and then so here it says that that Trump has been conceding that socialism could be politically potent didn't catch Sanders' campaign by surprise. One of the reasons I feel so strongly about Bernie's ability to beat Trump is because we know that the Democratic nominee will have to credibly explain that Trump betrayed the working class with false promises and that he does not put forward real solutions to help struggling people, said Faz Shakir, Sanders' 2020 campaign manager. Bernie can and will do that successfully. We'll have a national debate about policies that help the 1% versus policies that lift the 99%. I get the sense Trump knows the reckoning is coming and is worried about being exposed as a fraud. No Sharpie edits will save him. I think he's referring to the Sharpie when Trump used it when he was writing on a board that was like when he was talking about the recent hurricane that happened or something. So apparently he was using a Sharpie or something. I wasn't really keeping up with what was going on regarding that, but that's what I think he's referring to. And then the article continues. It says, now it appears socialism is roughly as popular as Trump. And the president himself recognizes that Sanders, the only self-described avowed socialist running, may be more formidable than he previously thought. As the Daily Beast reported in April, Trump will at times totally unprompted bring up Sanders' working class support and concede that there is in fact potential for the Democratic Socialists to win over some Trump voters with his populism, including on trade. Sources who have discussed this with the president said. Trump also indicated that he's been impressed by Sanders' ability to fire up his base, rake in small dollar donations, and attract big crowds at rallies, though not in the president's words as good as Trump. Yeah, of course. Well, I'll tell you right now, Bernie Sanders is attracting tons of big crowds. That doesn't mean Donald Trump doesn't attract crowds either, and he does. He's very, very popular among his base of right-wing, sycophantic, supporters. Let alone, majority of, I think it's like 90% of Republicans love Trump or something, which is definitely not something the establishment likes, because a lot of people don't consider Trump to be part of the establishment, even though a lot of his policies are part of the establishment. But just because he has like mean tweets and stuff, they don't like. They can't stand that Trump is popular. They can't comprehend that, apparently. But yeah, man, I mean, he should be afraid that that Bernie Sanders and his arguments for not socialism but democratic socialism are going to be getting a lot of attention and are going to be very popular. That's totally true. And in fairness to Trump, when he was running in 2016, his message was very populist too, and he knows that. He knows what he was pushing for. He knows that he was being the antithesis in some ways, many ways, to Hillary Clinton, because Hillary Clinton was standing up for the status quo. Hillary Clinton was going out there and talking about how, I'm just going to keep everything the same. America is already great. We need to keep it the way it is. President Obama is a wonderful president, and he kept everything wonderful, and I'm going to keep it just like he did. I mean, who wants to listen to that? I mean, considering the fact that considering the amount of people are suffering out there, the fact that, 75%, 76% of Americans are making $30,000 or less, half of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. I mean, these things alone, 45,000 people are dying every year from lack of health care. These things do not make America great. By the way, ironically, the new slogan for Donald Trump is Keep America Great 2020, essentially KAG 2020. Instead of MAGA, MAGA 2020, it's KAG 2020. So he's ironically making the same argument she did, but after his first, obviously 4 years or 3.5, 4 years. But yeah, that's not an argument you want to hear when the country is still in the fucking shitter. With wages are fucking haven't increased. Income inequality still exists. People are still living on the streets, homeless. People are, like I said, dying from lack of health care. Premiums are rising. I mean, nothing is getting better in this country, and it was not getting better under Obama. I mean, we're bombing 8 different countries right now. We're spending trillions and trillions and trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars on endless wars, even though we should be focusing on fixing things in this country, in our country, at home. And this is something Trump, railed against. He was like, "Yeah, this is terrible. We need to focus on everything that's happening in America. Why are we in Syria? Why are we in Afghanistan? We need to pull out of there and focus on everything in America." In reality, he didn't end up doing anything close to that, because we're still in those fucking 7 countries. In fact, the 8th country was the one that he added. He added Niger on top of that, or Niger, however we say it. He added that on top of the wars that we were already in. And so Trump is not a populist, but he does put out populist-esque or populist-sounding arguments and makes those kind of speeches that attract certain people. And they love it. They like to hear that stuff, and they, to some extent, they like the fact that he, maybe is sort of a shill for the Republican Party, because he's pushing for like what the kind of the typical towing the line of the Republican Party and what they put and what they stand for. But they love that he's like, he has, he's on Twitter and he's sending out all these tweets and talking shit on there and declaring war on there, or trying to declare war on there, and saying all the things. He's putting out mean tweets about everybody and calling everybody this and that, and name calling them and insulting them on Twitter and stuff, starting drama and shit. The fact that the media gives him so much attention, gives his tweets so much attention. They love that shit. They love the fact that Trump is a rabble rouser. Now, to some extent, Bernie Sanders is a rabble rouser. Now, he doesn't do that through Twitter. Bernie Sanders does that through policies. He does that through speeches. He does that through what he, the things that he advocates for. He doesn't have to do it on Twitter. And That's what people love. That's what I love. That's what progressives out there that I know love about Bernie Sanders. We don't need somebody to be on Twitter saying the things that Bernie Sanders is saying. We're doing that already anyway. So like me, myself, all the people on there that are on social media, we're doing that. Bernie Sanders doesn't need to do that. He does put out, pithy tweets, as the head of the Working Families, national director, whatever said, puts out pithy tweets. So yeah, that's fine. He puts out pithy tweets, but he doesn't just put out tweets that are pithy. He also puts out tweets that are substantive and they're policy based. And if you want to call those pithy, then fine. But they register with millions of Americans, and they love what he has to say, and they love the substance that he puts out there that people can relate to, compared to just a bunch of fucking platitudes and cliches and ridiculous slogans and shit like that, like Hillary Clinton would do, and like a lot of Democrats out there, let alone just the typical bullshit talking points that they like to put out there, and stronger together, and we're for good things and against bad things, shit like that. That's not something doesn't inspire anybody. Bernie Sanders is an actual inspiration among regular people, among the people that support him, the people that are in his campaign. So, when you see Donald Trump being scared of the possibility of taking on somebody that is a socialist, that's a great thing. And that's a very positive step forward. And when they said socialism is roughly as popular as Trump, that means it's roughly in the 40-ish range, 40, maybe all close to 50% range, which ends up becoming a plurality of Americans, which is good, close to, well, not just a plurality, that's actually, but over 50% would be a majority. But yeah, but that's a big deal. And like I said before, man, these politicians that get called socialists who are not socialists, those aren't the people that we need to be running. If we have an actual person that has the name socialist in their, political ideology, or the label for their political ideology, then that's a hell of a lot better than somebody like Elizabeth Warren that calls herself a capitalist, or Joe Biden, who doesn't even, I don't know what the hell he calls himself, capitalist too, whatever label he wants to put on himself. But those people, they're going to be called socialists too, or they're going to be, portrayed as doing socialist-ish policies. But either way, the Republican Party is going to call anybody that's facing them a socialist. So you might as well just put in a real socialist in there, or a democratic socialist, whatever you want to call Bernie. You might as well put the real thing in there instead of putting somebody in there that's not going to be doing anything that's different, but then the Republican Party is going to portray them as doing something that's totally different, when in reality it's not, like I said. And it's whatever Biden, Elizabeth Warren, Buttigieg, Kamala, if any of those people happen to make it to the general election and win the nomination, they're not going to do anything that's even close to being socialist. But then when they get called a socialist, they're not going to know how to respond. They're going to be like, no, I totally support what the American people want, and I am for good things and against bad things. And Donald Trump is a sexist and a racist, and he doesn't care about American people, and he's corrupt, and he needs to be impeached. Like, you're not focusing on substance. You're not focusing on policies. And that's how Republicans are. Now, to Elizabeth Warren's credit, maybe she can be the only other person other than Bernie Sanders to focus on policy. So I can somewhat give her credit for that, but I still don't think she would do well, because she calls herself a capitalist. And if she's going to go out there and get called a socialist, she's going to fumble over her words. And I don't trust that she's going to be able to take on Trump. So Bernie Sanders, again, if I haven't already made it clear, I'm saying it a million times over, Bernie Sanders is the candidate that needs to take on Trump. He is the candidate that is going to beat Trump. Trump is even admitting it himself here, as I read in this article. I mean, that tells you everything. Now, whether or not that's like a reverse psychology move, where he wants to like trick people into supporting Bernie because Trump, is saying he's scared of it, and then wants to trick people to vote for Bernie Sanders, so that in reality, Bernie Sanders is actually easy to take on. I don't know. Maybe that's the case, but again, if you're going to take on somebody that's an actual socialist, and you're going to call, you want to do that, it works out a hell of a lot better for that socialist if they get called a socialist, because they'll just admit it. Yeah, I'm a socialist. I believe in the policies that majority of Americans believe, whether it's Medicare for all, whether it's free college, whether it's a living wage or $15 minimum wage, whatever, higher minimum wage in general would be nice. It supports all these, ending the wars. Like, these are all things that they're popular. So whatever the hell you want to call them, it doesn't fucking matter. At the end of the day, they're the things that people want, and they're the things that people support. So you can call it socialist, you can call it communist, you can call it Marxist. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, it's something that people are going to vote for because they know it's going to help them, regular people. And as long as you're somebody like Bernie Sanders who could frame issues in these kind of ways, you're going to have somebody that's going to be able to put out information out there for people to kind of get ingrained in their mind, and to know, like, okay, yeah, that's great. Yeah, I'll totally vote for Bernie Sanders. I don't even want to vote for Trump anymore. Let me go vote for Bernie Sanders. I guarantee you Bernie Sanders will be able to get people to not vote for Trump and vote for him instead. And it's happened before. There's been people that have called into C-SPAN, and the callers on C-SPAN and stuff, talking to on one of their shows where they take calls, and people have said, like, yeah, I used to support Donald Trump. I support Bernie. And Bernie has done town halls in right-wing states like West Virginia, and he's talked about how he's he's talked about how Donald Trump is corrupt and he's not helping them. And those people, the people that are at those town halls, are clapping for him and loving him. They're like, oh, that's great. I'm going to vote for you. I'm going to support you. Look at the Fox News town hall that Bernie Sanders did a few months back. Bernie did a Fox News town hall. It got tons of millions and millions of viewers. The entire audience was clapping for him when he was saying, I'm going to push for Medicare for all. I mean, how great is that? You've got a Fox News audience clapping for Bernie Sanders when he says, I'm going to do Medicare for all. Now, watch Elizabeth Warren go do that, and she says, I'm going to do some version of Medicare for all, and we'll take different paths and stuff. People are going to be like, it's going to be like murmuring. People are just going to be sitting there and just like, yeah, that's great. I don't know if I really trust you. So, yeah, they're not going to trust her, and they're not going to trust any other candidate that goes out there and pretends to, push some sort of version of Medicare for all like Kamala Harris and shit do. They don't believe them when they do that. And at least with Bernie Sanders, you can believe him when he tells you something, because he's actually honest and he's forthright and he's a straight shooter, and he's not going to bullshit you.